Good morning. I'm Richard Danley. I am with the Dynamic Eclipse Broadcast Initiative. As you've heard, I'm a student out of Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. There is a Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. They're somewhat related, but they do have different focuses. For most of our project here, has anybody heard of CATE 2017? No, okay. Well, that's good. We're going to cover a little bit of it anyway. CATE 2017 was our project for the 2017 eclipse. DEB is our follow-up project. It's run by the same principal leads. There is a CATE 2024. It's not associated with what we had. I'm not actually sure what their goals were other than just borrowing the name, but for CATE we had a largely, how do I want to put it, big attempt to record the eclipse across the United States and get an active view of the sun throughout the entire path. This next slide is going to look a little familiar for a lot of people. Most of you are astronomers or have some interest in it. But you can create an eclipse just about anywhere, but it's not exactly what we have with a solar eclipse. Just holding your thumb out at arm's length, you can cover up the eclipse. But the scattered light that travels through the atmosphere does not allow you to see the corona. With a solar eclipse, typically only there's a higher eclipse. Only with a total solar eclipse will you actually be able to see the corona, and that's what we're looking forward to coming up on 2024. There is eclipse coming in 2023 in October, I believe on the 14th. We will be doing an assistance with that one, doing a kind of a practice run on doing our broadcast. So here are our project leads. Matt Penn is doing jazz hands on the left, and Bob Bear is on the right. I am under Bob Bear for the most part. I do regularly speak with Matt Penn, but he's out of Arizona, so I don't communicate with him quite so much out of Illinois for obvious reasons. So why Carbondale? Why was I sent here? So we have our 2017 path right through here. And we have our 2024 path right through here, and Carbondale is located right there. We're very, very fortunate. We have a university there that is, as they've been advertising very heavily for the past 7 years, the crossroads of the eclipse. There's some surrounding areas that are similar, like Murfreesboro or Carterville. Those places do not have universities. We are the only location that actually has dedicated equipment and a dedicated university for procuring equipment that will assist with that one. So I really can't, as I mentioned earlier, I can't talk about DEB without talking about CATE. CATE 2017 did not start in 2017. It actually started in 2014, and they were looking for funding even before that. You can see the start of it in the eclipse in the Faroe Islands, in Indonesia. You might notice there's no real image associated with that one. That's because they were clouded out. They didn't get full visual while they were in Indonesia. But it's been a long, ongoing project. With that, it was largely a citizen science project. They held training workshops all throughout the United States. They did almost any level of experience. They helped people along. We were provided equipment through Daystar. It was really, really heavily specialized. Almost all of it was custom made for us. And you can see here what our groups and volunteers were. There were quite a number of them associated with the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, NASA, National Solar Observatory, various high schools, various universities. We were really, really lucky to get this number of volunteers in 2017. A little bit more on that one, kind of showing where they were across the United States. So, for eclipses, this is what you will usually get with a in-space solar observatory. Because of how they work, because they have to shift their orbits, we don't get really the inner corona. When we get total solar eclipses on Earth, we get to see the inner corona. We get to see parts that even deep space telescopes are not able to see, or solar telescopes, I should say. Hopefully this works. So this is what you'll typically kind of get with, I believe this is our CATE 2016. And that's kind of, you can see how these accurately trail out. and we were able to match what they were able to get with the outer corona. And that's what the Solar Dynamics Observatory is normally able to see with just the sun. So you're able to trace this corona all the way back to the sun and see these details. Now, they actually did a lot of work just to get this matched up and traced. There's a little bit of off, but it can be as close as it can. So with these projects, we usually take several different exposures. You'll notice these, You'll notice that these are quite a bit underexposed. You can barely see anything, all the way to overexposed. And with these, we take HDR stacks. They take a number of images, typically automatically, or well, with Kate it wasn't automatically done. They had to manually enter it. But what we're doing now is we're automatically doing this, where it'll take these different exposures, 4 milliseconds, or 0.4 milliseconds, 4 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds, and their variants at 1.3 milliseconds. And with those, they're able to stack them together and form these large exposures that kind of filter out, and you're able to see each layer of the corona as you develop the image through HDR stacks. And so you get something like this. You can see quite a bit of detail here with the corona. You can't see the text. We'll cover a little bit of that here in just a moment. But you're able to see each layer as it is. I don't know if you can see it very well, but you can actually see each section of the HDR stack that we did. And that's where you see these little ribbons. We left these in because they do help quite a bit. If you see a lot of images that might show up on Astronomy Picture of the Day, those will often be filtered out. Almost everybody has them, but they pass them out because they don't quite look so clean, but they do actually have a lot of scientific data in them. And I believe this next one is actually a video of what we had with the 2017 data. Hopefully this plays. Sorry for the jitteriness. This had to be coordinated and balanced and stabilized, so this gives you a little bit of motion sickness. I apologize. But down here you can actually see the layers of the corona and these coronal streamers moving around, which you're not able to see with just I believe this was a 2-minute eclipse video. You're not going to be able to see the sun change. But over the 90-minute period, we were able to get quite good data out of this and stream together the video and get these details that popped out over the entire eclipse. Even over here, you can see this, well, maybe. If you look really closely, you can actually see this polar streamer appear and disappear. And these are really, really difficult to see, these fast polar streamers. We have more details at this website. Remember to enter the www2. It doesn't work if you don't. I wish they would fix that, but. So, moving off of Kate, what does Deb hope to improve? We would like to do a real-time broadcast. So, I think this was recently covered in Sky and Telescope. Does anybody know, after the 2017 eclipse, NASA did a survey that asked how people felt about it on a scale of 1 to 10? Who here saw the 2017 eclipse? On a scale of 1 to 10, how was it?
We happened to be at a place that didn't have much of a horizon. I was hoping to see that. We did see the shadow band afterwards, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
And of course, whenever you see eclipses, it's who you see it with.
Yeah.
That makes the most fun.
Yeah.
It was good.
We were on the lake, believe it or not, shooting pictures of the eclipse from a boat, handheld, and they were.
It's difficult.
I would give the eclipse and the experience of the eclipse, and my wife is back there, she saw it with me. I would give the eclipse about a 12 on a scale of 1 to 10.
And
There were clouds around us in the mountains, but the lake was clear.
just gorgeous.
The whole experience of the darkness of the eclipse and everything was accentuated by being on the lake. And I had seen another eclipse before that, so it wasn't just a unique experience. So yes, it was a very good eclipse.
Yes?
Yeah, I didn't get the number. I'll do my slide with that thing. It was 11.
It was an 11. And
And I did see out in Montana, I saw the 1979 eclipse in eastern Montana, and the experience was different because there was, big sky on it.
yeah. But but that's typically what you'll get for people that see a total solar eclipse. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're going to say 10 or more. After NASA did their survey, the average response was about an 8.1, which sounds a little unusual. And it turns out that a big part of that was a little bit of how it was portrayed in the media, and I'll cover that here in a few moments when we talk about the Australian eclipse a couple months ago. You would hear, oh, well, in this location we'll have 70% totality or 90% totality. There is no 70% totality or 90% totality. There is a partial, and then there's totality. But people were a little bit misled due to a lack of communication on that one. So a lot of people that went to see the eclipse, where they would have normally traveled to see totality, stayed in a different location because it wasn't as busy. And so they didn't really get to experience it. Hopefully, with this next eclipse, they'll have a better chance of that one. But it does give a little bit of an issue. With Deb, we're really hoping to kind of communicate this better. And part of that, Kate was really expensive because of the custom equipment, because of everything we had to do. The Deb initiative hoped to lower those costs for each site significantly, which allowed more people to actually view the eclipse. So part of our change from Kate was real-time broadcast. We would like to be able to have it up on a website where you can look at the location, where it's happening. As soon as the HDR stack is ready, it uploads and it displays on our website. Off-the-shelf equipment. Believe it or not, the equipment has gotten a lot better since we first developed it back in 2015, 2016. What you have now matches what was really, really heavy upper, I don't want to call it expert equipment, but at least advanced equipment from that. We would like to actually have participation outside the path of totality. So much as I just said, there's partial and there's totality, there's still a lot of people that can't travel, and we would like them to be able to experience it as well. So if they're able to image even partial eclipses, it does give us a lot of extra data, especially when it comes to things like solar flares, if there's any that happen during the eclipse. Rare chance, I know, but there's always the possibility. And we had a little bit of trouble with the previous ones where we did not have a go-to mount. So a few locations had some trouble getting actually on the sun and keeping tracked. The new system does allow active go-to travel and tracking, so they are able to enjoy the eclipse instead of having to fiddle with the equipment the entire time. So I was told not to do phases, but I'm going to do phases. We're going to talk about this in the terms of Marvel phases. There's no end phase. It just keeps going on and adding numbers. But for Deb, we really started kicking off with the lunar eclipse of May 2021. And that was where we first started getting kind of our equipment ideas and working out how we were going to be able to do a good recording and broadcast it live. And we've kind of ticked along for the most part. We only have 2 major parts to go, which is the annular eclipse in October and the total eclipse in April. We just finished up our total eclipse in Australia just a few months ago. That was quite the adventure, flying into Perth and driving the 13.5 hours up to Exmouth. There's only just the bare tip of it, but we were able to see a good part of it. With that, I believe our next slide. So, with our next slide, I do have to go all the way back here to the total eclipse of 2021 before we go ahead. So this gentleman's here, his name is Fred Isburner. He's actually part of our local astronomy club. So you'll notice he didn't quite get totality right here. He was on a boat near the Arctic Circle. It was clouded out. Typically happens when you have solar eclipses over the ocean. They were able to actually see it, but when they got the equipment set up and they were recording it, the boat had to turn around, so they got almost no data whatsoever. It was unfortunate, but it did show us a lot. You can see one of the early iterations of Deb right here, which was based on a Raspberry Pi with a Pi camera with a solar filter on it. And it was quite compact. It fit in a small Tupperware container on a tiny little tripod. And that was originally part of it. I think the total cost was like less than $400. That had to get tossed out because of some difficulties with procuring parts and just trouble with the equipment altogether. But this is why we do test on this, so that we're not on Eclipse Day and be like, oh wait, this doesn't work. So our next big one was this previous eclipse in Australia. I traveled there with 3 others, and then we had a study abroad group. Now, with Australia, the vast majority of it was over the ocean. Fred was actually up here. He wasn't participating I think his wife got onto him and told him not to participate. He's retired. He doesn't need to be doing this anymore. That lasted for about 3 months. But we traveled all the way from Perth and drove straight up there. Well, I want to say straight up there. We drove here, 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 and then here, thanks to the Astrotourism Australia board. We had clear skies. It was a gorgeous eclipse. Now, the fun part about this one was it was actually a hybrid eclipse. I think that's only about 3 to 4% of eclipses, where at the beginning and end of it, it's an annular eclipse. Because the moon is so far out on its orbit, it doesn't cover the sun during the whole part of it. But fortunately, during this little section right here, we did have totality. Oh, while we were in Exmouth, we're coming up on about a 5-minute eclipse. Our time in Exmouth was a grand total of 54 seconds, which, if you've experienced an eclipse, that's not long at all. Here's our drive. You can see how we traveled up there. I do have to give thanks to Astrotourism. They did help us support us on this one. Most of Australia was sold out for quite a while before this. They helped us actually get accommodations and be able to do our work here. Here's our 3 other team members. Here is Bob, of course. You can see the bag on his head to keep the flies away. It was quite bad. Lance Griswold was our undergraduate assistant. And here is Chris Mandrell, who is our grad student. He can't be here. He was sick during these past couple weeks, so he hasn't been able to travel. This will probably be the only photo you see of me. There actually aren't a lot that were on my phone, so you'll just have to enjoy my face as it is now instead of any others. They were primarily working with the DEB equipment, which you'll see right here. I was working with the solar steam equipment, which is this 100 millimeter lens scope. I am looking at the sun. Fortunately, this one has a calcium K filter on there, so I did not lose my eyesight with this trip. And finishing off the rest was our study abroad group. Ignore these people over here. We had about 14 young ladies with us who assisted, and they drove up a few days after we did. They did part of the Astrotourism board. They were really, really helpful. We do have to include them on this, even though they weren't part of the research trip. They were instrumental in getting word out and helping us with pulling filters off and everything like that when totality happened. Here's what our setup ended up looking like. You can see the only other photo of me back there working with the lens scopes here, and here are the projects that they were working on, which, again, you're going to see similar to this one. Everybody asks me when I tell them that I went to Australia, did you see a kangaroo? Yes, I did. Most of them were on the side of the road, not alive anymore. But we did see these. They were very upset with us that we were taking their photo. Just to head that off, yes, we did see kangaroos. The photo that I just took, this is actually what we did. This is not processed by any way. It's just straight through the calcium K filter once I put the camera back on, which kind of gives you a little bit of experience. In 2017, we were at a lower point of solar activity. The sun looked really plain. You didn't see a lot of spots. During April, we had quite a bit of solar activity. There's some spots that you can actually just barely see on here that really kind of pinpoint out how active it was even outside the larger regions. So this is what we got. The system I was working on and the DEB initiative instrument. Now you might notice this isn't fully covering totality. We found that our cameras were not quite good enough. We'll cover that again in a moment. And that this one doesn't cover totality. Again, when we take these trips, we do our best to work out how we're going to work with the equipment. About 5 minutes before totality, one of our members realized that they made a mistake in the code that they needed to go fix to separate the filtered light from the unfiltered light. They were using a yellow filter and they want to get separated out. I realized we had the same issue and I'm like, I'll deal with it later. They made the change and a code mistake happened. They did not get totality. It was really, really unfortunate, but it did kind of teach us we need to work out the code beforehand and double check on everything. I'll give myself props here. I ignored that issue and I did get totality. These are just the partial eclipse images. This is unprocessed. These were after processing. It really didn't take much. I think we didn't even do these automatically. We just ran it real fast. And we did get really, really good data from the partials. And yes, this is a total sum, just this was a little bit more processed using Planetary System Stacker. Again, off-the-shelf software, off-the-shelf parts. So covering Deb. One of the big changes that we wanted to make was we wanted to reduce the cost. The cost per site, I believe, in 2017 was $6,000 to $8,000. With this one, if you had all the equipment, which comes out to about what we had right here, total cost, if you need everything, was about $8,000. We had the majority of it. I believe our total cost for each of the pieces that we had that were there came to about $1,400. It really, really was a lot cheaper. We were able to do more, with our tests, we were able to do a lot more locations and a lot more setups that each group will be able to work with. And part of Deb is not just doing solar. I mean, it wouldn't be really, really good if we had a, I'm gonna step right in front of this again. It wouldn't be really, really good if this was only good for solar eclipses, because once that was it, each team would pack up their equipment, it would sit away, and they would eventually get sold off. So here's what Matt Penn has been doing. He's taken a few images, quite a broad view, field of view on this one, but we are able to actually get some good deep sky images. Here's the Tarantula Nebula. If you can tell me what part looks like a tarantula, let me know afterward. But this isn't even processed. We took these while we were in Marwa, Australia, using just FITS files, and we limited down what our light exposure was, and after that, that was it. And this is probably a little bit more familiar with us in North America. He put that data on the image, and then he failed to send me that part. So I'm not actually sure what his exposure time was. I believe it was about 6 or 7 minutes. So with April 2024, here's what Deb's kind of optimum locations would be. We would achieve totality. I did not make this image. It would look a lot better. Achieve totality all the way across North America right here. With the partials up in here towards the Seattle region, or what is that, Wyoming? No, north of Wyoming, Montana. And even down here in Florida. We are fortunate. We actually have one all the way down in Puerto Rico. We were happy to actually get the assistance with them. They were ecstatic to be working with us. So part of Deb is not just, again, getting totality, it's getting these partial images too. And that's really what our NASA grant was part of, was they wanted partial images so that they could kind of see how reading the lunar limb across a solar eclipse happens. It was able to get really, really good data as the light passes through the mountains on the moon. Here's where our current sites are. You will notice that we're all the way down here in Mexico. An absolute ton of locations here in Texas and around our home area of Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, Indiana. And you might notice we're a little sparse up here in the Northeast. We're as far up as New Brunswick, but we do need a few more sites along the path. We've gotten quite a number of locations we're excited about, but we would like to be able to complete our totality path throughout it. Following Deb, again, I mentioned that it doesn't just stop at the eclipse. So this is from using some of the equipment with Kate. We were able to do flattening. I'm not going to attempt those names here. They were actually able to get good processing that they were published on and able to work on their PhDs following up. This is in transit of Mercury, and this was covered in Reflector 2020. And several science fair projects that they had. Probably the most exciting one that I worked with, and not just because my principal and lead this is what he got his thesis on, was the Kate equipment was actually able to detect exoplanets. As they passed in front of the star, they were able to record the light curve as it dipped down and moved back up. And so even basic citizen science equipment can give you really, really good scientific data and actually help detect exoplanets, which is pretty cool. Kind of finishing off a little bit more with those, here's the exoplanet data. Some of the solar white light detections that they had with another project, and they were able to map the light curve of Cleopatra and actually get data on how the asteroid was, what size it is, and how it moves, and even a little bit of what shape it is. So if you're interested in getting Deb, we do actually still have a number of spots open. We have our core team, site observers, state coordinators. We have a ton of positions that are still open on that one. Again, this is a citizen science project. You don't have to have a physics degree that, like I'm working on, or really any heavy experience. We have groups as young as Girl Scouts that are working with them. Or young Girl Scouts, like I think the oldest or the youngest is about 11 or 12 years old. So heavy experience isn't necessary, but it does help, especially if you have the equipment. It does lower our cost over time. But again, it's a citizen science project. Not going to pop up? Oh well. Do we have any questions? Yes.
I'm a astronomy teacher at a private school in Michigan, and I had taught the head of my school, this is really good, in taking essentially the entire school, about 800 students to the Eclipse in Ohio. So, yeah, I will have lots of people. Some of them actually pretty good science students, myself, so I want to get in touch with you because we'll be in Ohio.
Okay. Well, so, yeah, actually, we do need teams as far south as Ohio, so yeah. All right. Anybody else? Yeah. We hope to see you there. Okay. Actually, funny part, Matt Penn has a PhD in solar physics. He worked with the Solar Dynamics Observatory, or National Solar Observatory, and a few years ago he left. He wasn't really happy with the position, kind of the politics involved with it. He retired from that and ended up working for Raytheon. So he jokes now, he is a heliophysicist, but he tends to have the joke of calling himself an amateur astronomer now. Any other questions? Yes.
I've had some connection to a teacher who belonged to the academy. And I'm sorry, but I don't have her here today.
I wish Chris Mandrell was here with me today, so. Okay. We'll write that down afterward. I'll get you in contact with Corey here in a few minutes. Yes? So for Kate, they sent people out to do teams. We're hoping to kind of minimize that. Part of it was reducing costs, so travel. This was a kind of expensive trip for this one. I know, joking, considering that we all went to Australia. But the training is largely going to be video-based. We recorded videos, I think, 2 weeks ago. They're going to go to people that are far better actors than we are, and they're going to kind of show you how to set them up and narrate over and show what the general setup of it is. And it's really not complicated. That is the whole setup. It's just a 40-millimeter scope on a Ioptron Skyhunter mount. You can set it up, and I set it up last night just to practice, and it took me about 8 minutes. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes. That's fine. Say that again? Mm-hmm. 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 If you want to sign up, we do actually have teams that are going towards the annular. We are not far away from it. I would suggest you get with them really, really soon. But even if you are just heading there, we do have a number of teams that you might be able to participate with. If you talk with me afterward, I'll get you in contact with Corey. We can see if you can help with that one. Okay, no problem. Anyone else? Okay.